Welcome to Erin channel and welcome back to Screw Thread course or the nut video. So we've just finished off the bolt model, and in this video we're going to make a nut which screws onto the top of it. So from within Solidworks, start a new document and then choose new part. Then we want to start a sketch on the top plane. So just select it in the feature 3 on the left. And then press sketch from the buttons that pop up. So on the top plane, we want to draw a profile of the nut. And we'll start this by selecting the circle tool and drawing a circle fixed to the origin. Then we'll select the polygon tool and we'll draw a 6-sided polygon, which is a bit larger than this circle. And this shape represents the shape of the nut. Next, we need to add some dimensions. So get the Smart Dimension tool and make the inner circle 11mm diameter. So it's just a little bit larger than the bolt diameter to give some clearance between the bolt and the nut. Then add a dimension across the flat edges of the polygon and make that 22mm. So that's also a little bit larger than the bolt head. And you can see our sketch is still blue, it's still underdefined. And we can fix this by selecting one of the vertical lines and then pressing Make Vertical from the pop-up buttons. Now our sketch is fully defined and we can extrude the shape upwards. So we can stay within the sketch. Just go to the Features tab and press Extruded Post Base. Then set the distance to 10mm, which should just be set as default anyway, and press OK. And there we have the basic nut shape. So we can do a slow double click on this in the feature 3 and just rename the feature as something like nut. And this is also a good stage to save our part. So just call it something like nut and then maybe add our initials on the end. Next, we need to cut out the thread profile in the middle of this nut. And we're going to use a swipe cut feature, which is very similar to a swipe post base that we use to make the thread on the bolt. The main difference is that the cut obviously just takes away material, whereas the post base material. But for both of those features, we need the same two elements: a path and a profile. For the path, we are going to use a helix, exactly the same as we did for the bolt. So the first thing we need to do is draw the helix itself. So rotate our model around by holding down the middle mouse button and dragging. And then start a sketch on the underside face of the nut. Then within that sketch, select the inner circular edge and then just go to the Convert Entities tool. And when we click this, it should make the circular edge into a circle within that sketch. Now we need to make the circle into a helix. So this is a very similar process to what we did with the bolt. So we can stay within the sketch, just go to the Features tab, go over to Curves, press the drop down, and press Helix and Spiral. Then our preview should appear something like this. So in terms of settings, we want to keep the pitch the same as the bolt. With our screw threads, the pitch of the bolt and the nut should always be the same. And we'll make the pitch to 10. Then we'll notice on the preview, we are actually going the wrong way. We are not actually cutting through the nut model. So press reverse direction, and that should flip the direction of our helix. Then we'll add a few more revolutions to the helix, take the up to 2, just to ensure it cuts all the way through the nut. And let's set the start angle to 0 degrees. Then one final setting, the bolt was a clockwise thread, so we need to ensure that the nut is also clockwise thread. And we can see as I click between these two buttons, it changes the direction of the helix. One thing to note is that this direction, clockwise or counterclockwise, does depend on the initial direction of the helix, so it can be counterintuitive sometimes, and it can get quite confusing. So I'd recommend it at this stage, just choose one of the options. It doesn't really matter which one. Then in the next video, once the parts are finished, we are going to put them together in an assembly, and then we'll be able to see if we need to reverse one of the directions. Then press OK, and now we have our helix for the path. So the next thing we need to do is draw the profile sketch. And this should be drawn on the plane that cuts through the start of the helix. So if we spin our model around a bit and hover over the planes on the left, and you should see that this is the right plane. So start a sketch on that plane just by clicking on it in the feature 3 and then pressing sketch, and then go to a normal to view, which can be found on the view orientation menu. So now we should have a few like this from the side. We can see the helix, and we are going to throw a thread profile, which will cut out along that helix. Select the line tool and start throwing a vertical line down from the very start of the helix. And we are throwing the same sort of profile that we drew for the thread on the bolt. So it's just a four-sided shape like this. Then we need to add a horizontal center line across the middle. So hover over the right-hand vertical line and go around the midpoint of it, and we should pick up the midpoint symbol. When we do, left-click to start the line, and then move our mouse over to the left and pick up the midpoint of the left-hand vertical line as well. So the line that we just drew, the horizontal line, might not be exactly horizontal at this point, but that's okay as long as it goes from midpoint to midpoint. Then press Escape to exit the line tool. Then left-click on that line to select it, and we want to add a horizontal relation. So we should just be able to click Make Horizontal from the buttons that pop up. And we can also add this on the left if we need to. And we'll see this makes it so our sketch is now symmetrical. We also need to click on the line and press for construction over here on the left. And that will just make it so this line is ignored by any features. Then we just need to add in some dimensions. So select the Smart Dimension tool. Make this left-hand vertical line 6 mm, so it's just a little bit larger than the bolt profile to allow for a bit of tolerance. Then make the small vertical line 1 mm. And then make this internal angle 60 degrees. And that should fully define our sketch. And if your sketch isn't fully defined, you may just need to drag around the top left corner to ensure that it's coincident with the start of the helix. Then we can exit that sketch. Now we have the two elements we need for the swept cut. So we've got the profile sketch and we've got the path which is the helix. Now we can select both of these in the feature tree. So hold down Ctrl, select one and then select the other. Then we can release Ctrl and on the features tab press swept cut. And we should get the yellow preview as usual. If that looks okay, and just press OK, and this will cut the thread profile into the inside of our nut. And there, essentially the basics of our nut have now been created. So we can do a slow double click on the swept cut feature and just rename it as something like the thread cut. Now if we look at our nut from above, it kind of looks a bit wonky and uneven, but this is actually correct. And in the next video, we are going to put the bolt and the nut together in an assembly, and we'll able to see how they actually fit together and what their tolerances are like. And it probably looks a bit strange at this point because this is actually quite a coarse thread profile. Usually it would be a bit smaller than this, so this off-center effect wouldn't be as noticeable. In a later video, we're going to look at using standard thread profiles and making your own thread profiles in a bit more detail. Because obviously it's very easy just to follow along with the dimensions in this video. But the chances are that you want to create your own threads at your own custom sizes. So to add a few finishing touches, we'll go to a cross-section view by clicking on the cross-section view button here. And if we press OK, we can see we've got this helical thread cut going all the way through the middle of the nut. But the edges are quite sharp at the moment, so we are going to round this off with fillets. So select the fillet tool. And first we'll do these raised upper edges. Set the size as 2 mm. And then just select those two helical upper edges. Then press OK. And already that's looking a little bit better. Then select the fillet tool again. And this time we'll set the size to 0.5 mm, 0.5 mm. And just choose the bottom two edges of the thread profile. And if we can't quite see where it is, just zoom in a bit and there should be two sharp corners. Just click on both of these and we should get the two helical previews again. Press OK. And now we are nearly finished. So then we can exit the cross-section view by pressing the button again. And then let's just add one final fillet. So select the fillet tool. Again 0.5 mm. And we'll add it around this loop on the top and on the bottom. And if we want to maybe could fillet these sharp edges, just to reduce the number of sharp corners there. So save our part, and that's essentially our nut complete. And if I drag back through the model, we can have a quick recap of what we've done. So we started just by sketching the basic nut shape, which was a circle with a polygon around it that was extruded upwards. Then we created a new sketch, which was just a circle with the inner diameter. And we used this to create a helix, which will be the path for the thread cut. Remember that the pitch of our helix in both the thread and the nut should always be the same. Next, we drew the thread profile, and we used the swipe cut to sweep this along and cut out the actual thread profile itself. Then to finish off, we just added the fillets to round things off a little. So there we have our nut. And in the next video, we'll be putting the nut and the bolt together in an assembly. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you like. I hope it can be a little helpful and useful.